Hello and welcome to Soul's Compass Healing. My name is Brianne Lazinski. I sincerely welcome you to this space. If you're new here, you can hit the subscribe button and hopefully you'll be notified every time I release a new moon or full moon report. It is my intention in these videos to provide a overarching reading for the collective. And if you're interested in having a one-on-one reading that is uniquely tailored to you, as you are a unique soul along this journey with us all in the collective right now, you can get more information about that at soulscompasshealing.com. The link is in the description of this video. You will also find a link to my Instagram page and the Rasa Lila Astro School, taught by Timothy Halloran. It's Jeffrey Wolf Green Evolutionary Astrology. And so what I want to kick off this video speaking to is the fact that Jeffrey Wolf Green correlated Uranus to the individuated subconscious. What does that mean? It means that we all as individuals, whether we are aware that we are individuals or not, that has to do with evolutionary stages, which I'm not going to get into, we have a memory bank. This is how I interpret it. We have a memory bank that even in this lifetime, we all know we have some memories that we have recollection of and a lot that we've lived that we don't remember in our conscious memory. And all of those memories that we have lived in this life and in past lives does get stored in this subconscious memory bank. It does make up who we are, right? When we have the phenomenon of, for example, siblings born to the same parents, raised by them in the same way, yet they turn out completely different. Why is that? Or even twins, and it's like evolutionary stages has something to do with that. And also the individuated memory bank of where that soul is coming from in past lifetimes, who they are now, and where they're heading. And so Uranus serves this function. When we look to the collective unconscious and conscious memory bank of all that ever has been and is and will be, that is correlated to the sign of Pisces. So the whole year so far, we're about halfway through the year, we have had a North Node in Pisces. And we have had Neptune and Saturn culminating the last degrees of Pisces, entering in, right now they're both sitting retrograde at 1 degree Aries. They're going to go back into Pisces in the fall before February 2026 going finally into Aries for the last time. And what this symbolizes, and I've spoken to it many times, is the dissolving of our society's structures, the ways that we have been doing things as a collective. And the phenomenon that we are seeing right now under this full moon is that Mars is going to be exactly opposite Neptune and Saturn in the sign of Libra. Mars enters Libra on August the 6th, and Neptune and Saturn are also each sextile Pluto and its ruler Uranus. So Uranus is obviously ruling this moon too. But that's enough lingo for today. What I really want to get into is the fact that as we reflect on the overwhelming amount of information of what is being exposed, right? This is the year where we are either waking up or being woken up, or refusing, resisting to be woken up. What the societal ills have been in our collective memory bank. If you look back on the history of humanity, it's not utopian. It's very dark and very tragic. And this is all the residue of all of that is coming up to the surface right now. I hear many people saying the world has never been crazier, it's never been more unsafe. Do we know that? I don't know. But we sure as hell have the information that that's what's going on because of the issue of globalization, right? How we can know in an instant just by going on the internet what tragedies are happening in what part of the world at any given time. Well, that's a whole nother story. There's a lot more to it than that. But my point is that there are undercurrents, right? This sort of unconscious memory bank that serves as the undercurrent or the underbelly of our society structures. What have our societal structures been built up upon? Right now, that is being exposed. And we can see that there are many cultures within that undercurrent that promote violence and other hideous acts that humanity does against one another. And thank you for listening. I know that not everybody wants to listen to this type of stuff, but I find it interesting because I don't want to be shying away from the reality of what it is to be a human right now. And so when we think about rape culture or grape culture, right, that is definitely a main undercurrent that forms how our society is structured. There is prejudices such as racism and sexism. Those are all these undercurrents that form the societal structures that we all live in. And what is happening right now, again, I've been speaking to this many times, is the painful opportunity to see the reality of these facts, that this is what our societal structures have been built up upon, right? This foundation of greed and violence manifesting in many, many, many different ways, stemming from our whole of humanity's history, right? This memory bank that I'm speaking to. So why do these times feel so isolating? Well, isolation is also correlated to Uranus and Aquarius. And what I am observing is that we can clearly see who is white knuckle holding on to the old structures of our society and the way that they operate based in violence, to be blunt. And there's folks who are seeing the reality of that being the case and want something different. And depending on where we are, who we have in our life, it can feel like a time of division, a time of isolation, where there's almost this, like, you know, Uranus is in Gemini now, where it's like this parallel reality happening, right? Where it's like these people are thinking and believing and living in this reality alongside these people who are thinking and believing and living in this reality. And it means that there is, you know, we think that we're so ready for the age of Aquarius to have this unifying force that we can, you know, see each other in our diversities and still accept one another. We are far from that in many respects, because what humanity needs is actually sitting down and conversing and acknowledging our differences, right? That acknowledging that we aren't all dealt the same hand of cards when we come into this lifetime. We all have our individual soul's journey that lands us up at a very different starting point than other people. And so to use the same measuring stick for everybody, that this is how we measure up success, is very oppressive. And it is really contributing to this sense of isolation and division. And so what I want to say is that we have Venus and Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. They will be pretty close together at the time of this full moon. And when are they? August 12th, they're going to be exactly conjunct. And I think really what is being asked of us in this conjunction is, by putting ourselves in the shoes of somebody else, we can learn that we aren't all the same. And this means learning how to listen to one another truly. And it is an intense threshold that we are at. We are at a crossroads between what we have been devoting our life to up until now, our life purpose, what we have been pouring our efforts into up until now. And now we're at this restless point where it's filled with discontent. It's running into the same issues over and over, seeing all of the repressed shit that humanity has not dealt with coming to a head, right? Exploding before our eyes. And it is leading us to this necessary having to dissolve, having to surrender to the fact that this is the reality of the times that we are living in. That we know that when we find out what isn't working, that points us to initiate new directions for what we will dedicate our life force to from here on out. And with Mars in the sign of Libra, opposing Saturn and Neptune, this can manifest in many different ways, right? This can be people wanting justice and liberation and willing to fight the good fight for that. And it can also be more ass-kissing, more people-pleasing, more self-sacrificing our individuality in order to climb the social status ladder. And so many other manifestations in between. But why do people remain resistant to being disillusioned, right? Mars is ruling Neptune and Saturn in Aries. So there is this initiatory energy happening during this time of reflecting over our humanity's collective unconscious and conscious history. And it's like, well, after we pour in so much dedication and devotion to a certain thing, that is when we can become blindsided by the negative aspects of that thing, right? Where it's like, oh, I have been benefiting from the way that society's systems have been running because, and I benefit from it, being a white woman. I do, have some benefits for sure. And I could cling on to those benefits and resist seeing how I am oppressed by the system, or resist seeing how the system oppresses other people, right? I try to choose a life where I am opening my eyes to that, but the more and more I realize as actually that's pretty rare, right? There are a lot of people who are very willing to put the blinders on in order to continue benefiting from certain systems, from certain relationships. And this is the year where something is going to come along that is going to burst that bubble, right? And that means that the whole damn thing gets challenged. And that is when people really, can lose it. Because it's like, well, I thought that this was true, or I was benefiting in this way, and now I no longer am. So what's my position in society? And this is the growing pains of Pluto entering the sign of Aquarius. It's not hop, skip, and jump yourself into liberation and unity with diversity. It is the fact that Jeffrey Wolf Green said, in order to be liberated from the known, you must know what is known, right? And this is the year where it is rearing its head up and in our faces, right? In order to break free from these systems that oppress us, we need to know the underbelly of how they function. What are the cultures that are at play here? And that takes a very brave soul to want to see that, because it's not rosy. Disillusionment is when the rose-colored glasses come off. And so when I'm speaking to coming back to Venus and Jupiter meeting in Cancer, when I'm speaking to putting ourselves in another person's shoes, this is the act of what humanity really needs at this point. We need that medicine of being able to put ourselves in another shoe, see reality from another person's vantage point, so that we can understand our differences. Through that, we will also understand our similarities. And through that all, we will see that all of this division that is being created, the isolation that is growing exponentially, we do have an inherent way of staying connected through this, and that is through sharing our stories with one another, through truly listening to one another. And another thing that I want to mention is Mercury is ruling our lunar south node. Mercury has been on a retrograde journey. Mercury retrograde is not the end-all be-all. Mercury has a very specific cycle, as all planets do, with the sun. And this retrograde journey is significant for many different reasons, but what I want to hone in on in this video is that at the time of this full moon, it's going to be stationing to turn direct at 4 degrees Leo, and it's going to be opposing Pluto. So this is about illuminating the past evolutionary journey we've been on. Are we growing more into our unique self, more in alignment with our life purpose after enduring all the pain we've been through? Who is that core essence that you continuously grow into? And so what I want to speak to is the fact that we can be definitely waking up to the collective trauma that has been swept under the rug for humanity's history, and now it's all coming up. And what is humanity's response to this? We can have a trauma response of fight, flight, or freeze, right? And so when we observe what humans are doing right now, it can more often than not be translated into a trauma response, because these times are heavy. What humanity has been through is heavy. What the individuated memory bank that you have, that I have, that is unique to our soul, is heavy. And so knowing that we have been through so much, yet we still have this essence that makes us who we are. Wow, that's spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. That there's this core essence of a person that can go through abuse and tragedies and all sorts of different acts of violence, and yet we are growing more into ourselves through these painful experiences. This isn't to glorify or romanticize trauma, but this is to speak to the fact that to a certain degree it does shape us, and also to a certain degree we remain our core essence remains. Our soul remains as its unique star that it is. There are necessary changes that we need to make. You know, we all know those people in our lives who are stubborn and don't change anything, and they remain static, and they might even regress in their lifetime. And that's sad to witness, because you can see that essence, the fire that makes them slowly dim. But what I'm speaking to is the fact that there is a growth towards and in more alignment with one's life force and essence when we make those necessary changes that we need to make in our lives. And they don't come easy, right? In this day and age, the temptation is to sell out, to sound like everybody else, to scrap to scrap being original, you know? Join the echo chamber of the new age, where we all just have the same lingo and we all just get paid $1 million and everybody's happy. And it's like, that is not Uranus. That is not the age of Aquarius. That is not individuation. That is skipping over individuation, right? And when we do this, it comes with all sorts of problems that we can see. And the New Age is like the easiest example, because it plays off of the specialness that we all want to feel, right? We all want to feel special, that we all have our own gifts. And then it reinforces the imprisoning hive mind consciousness, where people are either deemed basically in or out of the whatever club, the New Age club. And so it's no different than what Christ was preaching against 2,000 years ago. To actually stand up and be an authentic individual with original thoughts and speaking truth and being willing to listen to others, being curious about others' journey, how it's different from your own. Wow. Those are rare gems of people. Those are rare gems of people. And so this full moon is a time to connect with those people where you feel heard, where you feel safe to be you. And I hope that you have those people. And it is a tremendously healing endeavor to put yourself out there and try to find those people. It's not easy. And yet, at the same time, the more that we own our differences, what sets us apart from the masses, the more we will see others stepping out of the mold. And we will say, okay, there's my people. You know, everybody who's willing to let their freak flag fly, we can get together and, you know, create something, form something, collaborate with each other, or simply just be there for one another in the chaos of this year. And so I hope that we all have that, and there is a wonderful community to be a part of, the Rasa Lila healing community, which is linked in the description of this video if you're looking for opportunities to meet those kinds of people, because it's going to take us all rising up and in our own individual authentic self in order for us to move forward and build a new structure, new ways of being, and actually really deal with the residue of this undercurrent that we are seeing revving up before our eyes. So thanks so much for listening, and I will speak with you about the Virgo new moon in a couple of weeks.